good to be back. I'm not sure why you invited me back, though. Because, I'm leaving the service last week, and I asked my wife, who's supposed to be the encourager. I said, so how did it go? How was the presentation? And she said that her brain felt like it was hit by a Mack truck. So I didn't know how to take that. So just as a survey, how many people felt that way when they left? Like their brain was full. Yeah. So I'm going to go a little bit easier on you today. I'm going to be shorter, and it's not going to be as heavy, but it's still going to be a very weighty topic. Okay. So before I start, I'm just going to pray. My prayer is simple today, God. It's the same words that we saw on the screen given by David thousands of years ago. It's that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight. And so, Lord, as I speak today, I pray that you would just give us ears to hear and eyes to see, and just open our minds to the truth of your word. I ask all this in your name. Amen. So today we're going to talk about truth. The truth about truth. Can you handle the truth? I'm going to start by giving you one of my favorite Bible verses, okay? Now, you don't have to turn your Bible. It's going to be up on the screen. Let me read it for you. It's Jesus talking, and he says, I am one of the ways, I am one of the truths, and I am one possible life. You could come to the Father through me or not. It's all good. Live and believe, whatever you like. It's cool. Whatever you choose is okay with me, as long as you're sincere. Now, you're actually not going to find that in the Bible. You might find it in the book of Second Opinions. A lot of people like to add their opinion to the Bible, don't they? However, in our culture, when you tell people that there's truth, a lot of people, especially young people, will hear something like this. Actually, the real verse from the Bible is this. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And no one comes to the Father but through me. Actually, we sang in the last song, nothing has the power to save but your name. Okay, that was a truth claim. And we all believe that was actually true. But we sing that, and our culture says, yeah, that's true for you, but that's not true for me. You know, Buddhism is true for me. Or Hinduism, that's true for me. Or some New Age, Oprah, Chopra, spirituality, that's true for me. And so they'll say that to you. I don't believe the truth exists. And it's really strange. We're living in a time in history where we have actually abandoned the idea of truth, especially when it comes to moral claims and religious claims, as we'll see. As Christians, we're in a strange situation. We actually have to argue that truth exists before we can argue that Christianity is true. Okay? And so, why is this important? Well, truth exists here. Truth is foundational to the gospel. Okay? It's foundational to Christianity. Why is that? Well, you can't even begin to talk about sin and guilt or mercy and justice if there is no objective standard of truth. Okay? And so, if you don't have truth, well, the gospel comes crumbling down. So truth is foundational to Christianity. In fact, Paul said, if Jesus is not raised from the dead, our faith is what? It's in vain, or it's futile, right? And so that was a truth claim about reality. So truth matters. There's actually a story of a professor, his name was Frank Beckwith, and he was teaching a class in university on truth and ethics. And he had a young woman in his class, and she was a relativist. Now, a relativist is someone who believes that truth does not exist. Okay? That truth does not exist. Everything is relative. And she said, Dr. Beckwith, you've spent a lot of time in this class talking about truth. But why does truth even matter? And this was the professor's response. Without missing a beat, he said, do you want the true answer or the false answer? See, truth matters. This is a brilliant response because the very question, why does truth matter, assumes that there is such a thing as truth. You see, the relativists can't escape truth. In fact, the relativists will say, there is no truth. So how do you respond to that? Well, you ask the relativist, is that true? Is it true that there is no truth? You see, the statement is self-refuting. It's like cutting the branch you're sitting on, okay? It's self-refuting. And so a claim is self-refuting when the claim actually refutes itself. Here's a couple examples. Here's a couple fun ones. If I said, I can't speak a word in English, but if I said it in English, I refute myself. Or if I said, my brother, Andy, some of you know him, is an only child.
Okay.
But if he's my brother, then he can't be an only child. Some of you remember Winnie the Pooh. I'm sure I'm going to get into those books now that my daughter's getting a bit older. I remember watching it as a kid. Piglet would come to the door. He'd knock on the door, Winnie the Pooh's house. And Winnie the Pooh would often say, nobody's home. But you got to be home to say nobody's home, right? It repeats itself. Or, you're standing in line, you see it at the tabloids at the superstore, and they got the headlines, and one headline says, woman gives birth to her own biological father. Right. Now, you know that's false, okay? You don't have to, go investigate that. I wonder if that's true. No, it refutes itself. So relativism refutes itself. You'll often hear things like, you shouldn't force your morality on people. The crazy thing is, they're forcing their morality when they say that. So what's your response? Someone says, you shouldn't force your morality on people. Just say, why not? Because the next words out of their mouth is going to be them forcing that morality on you. Okay? Or they'll say, you shouldn't judge. But what are they doing all the while? Well, why are you judging me then? See, these kind of slogans or claims are so common in our culture. But they're self-refuting, okay? They're self-refuting. Now, relativism. You think no one actually is a relativist, right? Well, it turns out a survey done 10 years ago, 2002, by the Barnett research group, they've actually found that among Christians, only 32% believe in moral absolutes. That's adults. Now, here's the alarming figure. I mean, this is alarming, but among Christian teens, Christian teenagers, 9% believe in moral absolutes. The other statistic that was even more shocking that I didn't put on the screen is that 83% of teenagers in general, Christian, non-Christian, 83% said that truth is relative. Okay? In 1987, Alan Bloom, professor, wrote in The Closing of the American Mind, he said this. He said, there is one thing a professor can be absolutely certain of. Almost every student entering the university will believe, or will say he believes, that truth is relative. This is 1987. He said, the students, of course, may not be able to defend their opinion. They can't defend this opinion. It says, it's something with which they have simply been indoctrinated. You see, and I'm a teacher. I'm a high school teacher. And I know this is true. We teach kids what to believe, not why to believe it. Okay? So we tell them, truth is relative. I don't tell them that, but some teachers do. Truth is relative, and they just buy it, okay? Because you're the teacher, you're the professor. So, but you know what? I actually don't believe that anyone is actually a relativist. And here's why. I'm a teacher, like I said. If I tell my students, hey, on Friday, we're going to have a pizza lunch, we're going to have a pizza day and a movie. And then, Friday comes along, and I show up and I say, actually, I changed my mind. Today, we are going to have a unit test. What kind of response do I get? My students are appealing to some objective moral standard. You lied. That's unfair. You shouldn't do that. They'll say things like this. And so, I don't think anyone's really a relativist. And we'll come back to this. So, we're going to talk about the fact that truth exists. Now, this question, what is truth, was asked actually 2,000 years ago. If you look in your Bible, right after Jesus, he's talking to Pilate. Jesus just said, my kingdom's not of this world. Okay? And then Pilate said to him, so you are a king. And Jesus said, you say that I'm a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. See, Jesus thought there was truth. And so if Jesus thought there was truth, I'm going to think there's truth. And he said, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate said to him, what is truth? Now, Pilate didn't stick around to find out what the answer was. Okay, and so today we're going to actually look at this question, because it's a really good question. Truth, as defined by philosophers, is called the correspondence theory of truth. Okay? And simply put, this is a statement or a belief. This is when a statement or a belief is true if it matches up with reality. So here's an example. If I say today, I drove here in my red Ferrari, and it's in the parking lot, how do you know if that's true? You could go look in the parking lot. Okay, so you can see if my claim matches with reality. If you found this car, is my claim true? No, it's still a Ferrari, but it's yellow, not red. And if you found this car, well then it's really false. Okay? That's what I actually drive. Although my parents gave me a ride here today. So, truth is when a belief matches up with reality. Is there supposed to be smoke coming from the back door? I'm just joking, I'm just joking. I'm testing to see that you guys understand what truth is. You see, there's no smoke. There's no smoke. I should get an Oscar for that. I should get an Oscar for that. Because everybody got up. You know what? I did this with my wife. My wife, she usually comes to my talk. She's not here today. She has a wedding shower later. But I did this last night, and I was just giving a talk in the basement, and I looked at the storage room, and I said, is there supposed to be, and you should have seen her fly out of her seat. And then she went on to beat me. Yeah, exactly. So, because there's no smoke, you can see my claim is false. So you all know this. And so, you're probably thinking, well, I didn't know it was called the correspondence theory of truth, but this is this is common sense. This is the way everybody thinks about truth. Now, here's the catch. As soon as the topic is switched to morality, or as soon as the topic is switched to religion, then all of a sudden, people switch their definition of truth. Okay? So everybody believes in the correspondence theory of truth. But as soon as we talk about morality and religion, particularly in our secular culture, but even within the truth, without even knowing it, people switch the definition of truth. And let me show you what I mean. So let me ask you a question. What is the best flavor of ice cream?
French vanilla.
Strawberry? Strawberry, French vanilla? Just straight up chocolate?
Yeah.
You guys are actually all wrong. The best flavor of ice cream is actually butterscotch riffle. I'm sorry to inform you, but that is the best flavor of ice cream. Now, who agrees with me? Who thinks butterscotch riffle is the best flavor of ice cream? Hey, there's a couple people in here. Excellent. Hey, you changed your mind. I'm not convincing. So, okay, and who thinks that's false? Who thinks that's false? Uh-oh, we got a real problem here. See, some of you think that it's true, this statement, and some people think it's false. How could it be true and false at the same time? You see, but you guys don't know this isn't actually a problem because this is just a preference claim. This is called a subjective truth. Okay? It's a subjective claim. A subjective claim is when it depends on personal preference, private, internal preference. Okay? This truth only depends on the subject. That's why it's called subjective truth. So the subject makes it true or false. Okay? And so this is subjective truth. And actually, it's interesting. When I say that butterscotch triple ice cream is the best kind of ice cream, I'm not actually saying anything about the ice cream. I'm telling you about me and my preferences. Okay? There's another kind of claim. Okay? I said there's two kinds. There's subjective. And to show you the second kind, I want to ask you a question. What's used to control diabetes? Insulin, anything else? Any other options?
Medication.
Medication? Okay, so that's a good point. So diet, things like that. And so, what? I thought you were going to say butterscotch ripple ice cream. It's like right up there. So we all know that butterscotch ripple ice cream actually doesn't control diabetes. It'll send it off. It won't regulate it though. So it turns out that if your body is going to control your diabetes, insulin needs to be produced and regulated appropriately. So this kind of claim can't be true for you but not for me. All of us have insulin that is controlling things. And so this is a different kind of claim. It's actually not a preference claim. It's an objective truth claim. Okay? It's a fact about the way the world really is. And so this turns out to have consequences. You know, you can't just say, well, I don't believe insulin controls diabetes. I'm going to let butterscotch Ripple do that. Because that's my preference. You know, that's true for me. It doesn't matter if you believe it's true or not. It's an objective reality. Okay? So there's objective truth and there's subjective truth. Okay? We're going to call this subjective ice cream claims and objective insulin claims. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a quiz to see if you understand the difference. I know everyone's trying to sweat. You know, teachers love giving quizzes. Nothing gives me more. I'm giving an exam on Monday. Nothing gives me greater joy. So, to see the fear in their eyes. So let's take the quiz. So if I'm just going to put a claim on the screen, and if it looks like a subjective ice cream claim, just say ice cream. If it looks like an objective insulin claim, just yell insulin. And we'll see where we go. Don't be shy. But listen carefully. I'm not asking if the claim is true or not. Okay, true or false. I just want to know, is it a subjective claim or an objective claim? So here's the first one. Coke tastes better than Pepsi.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. See, there's some serious Coke fans out there. They really want it to be an insulin claim. It actually is, believe it or not, subjective. There's people who prefer Pepsi, believe it or not. And so it's an ice cream claim. Very good. You guys are passing so far. What about this one? Coke Zero has fewer calories than Coke.
Objective insulin.
That's insulin. Because I think Coke Zero, it's zero because it has 0 calories. Okay, good. Phew. So it's an insulin claim. It's about something. It's not about someone. Okay, how about this one? Now, the young folk won't know this one. But the Blue Jays, believe it or not, at one point in time, they won in 1992. And so that would be an insulin claim. Good. You guys are pretty good. Not too bad. So that's insulin. It's actually a particular kind of claim. It's a historical claim. It turns out that historical claims are insulin claims, okay? And this is going to weigh in later when we talk about Christianity, because Christianity is a historical religion, okay? It makes a lot of historical claims, and they're objective truth claims. The next one. How about this one? Bellhaven is the best Free Methodist church. Insulin, right? So I know there's some biased people in here, but this is actually an ice cream claim. Believe it or not, you're all shocked. Couple more. How about this one? Action movies are more enjoyable than romances.
Ice cream.
All the guys are thinking, say it isn't so. Yeah. So that's also an ice cream claim. Okay, this one might throw you off. Pastor Mike can bench press 300 pounds.
Insulin, probably.
You think it's insulin? Yeah. Anyone think it's ice cream? Okay, so here's where sometimes the confusion can take place. So I'm not asking whether it's true or false. I'm asking what kind of claim it is. So it could be that some of you believe that he can bench press 300 pounds. Some of you may believe he can't. Or maybe you just don't know. But just because you don't know doesn't mean there isn't a fact of the matter. Okay? We could set up a bench press over here, throw some 45s on, find Uncle Mike wherever he is, Pastor Mike, and then see if he can do it. So there is an objective reality. So it's an insulin claim. Okay? Really important. Just because we don't know the truth doesn't mean it's not an objective truth claim. Exactly. So how about this one? The Earth is the center of the solar system. Is that true or false?
False.
That is absolutely false. Now, there was a lot of people through the years who thought that was true. But it didn't make it true, did it? Just believing something doesn't make it true. There was an objective reality. And later we found through the scientific method that actually it's the sun that's at the center of the solar system, not the Earth. Okay? But this is still an instant claim. Okay? It's a fact about reality. It's actually a scientific claim. So now we know historical claims are objective truth claims, and scientific claims are objective truth claims. All right, now let me see if you guys can get this one. Abortion is wrong.
Ice cream.
Ice cream?
Oh, wait a second.
Anyone say insulin?
It's-
So we kind of a mix. Change your mind?
Yeah.
So is this a matter of personal preference, what I like and don't like? Or is it a fact about the real world? Is it an objective reality that's outside of any individual or culture? It's outside of us. So the answer that I'm going to argue is that moral claims are actually insulin claims. Now this is a huge confusion in our culture. Okay? Our culture is very, very, very confused on this. Here's an example. I like to mix it up with people online. Sometimes I'll go on my Facebook and put something controversial and see if any of my Facebook friends want to dialogue on it. And so, in the areas of evolution or, controversial things like homosexuality, that's been in the news a lot lately with different educational bills, and even abortion. And so I put abortion is wrong. And one of my Facebook friends, young lady, said that if you don't like abortion, don't have one. Now, what's the confusion here? I said abortion is wrong. And she said, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. First of all, I couldn't have one if I wanted to. But I didn't go there. But this is a very common slogan in our culture. You see it on bumper stickers. That's an actual bumper sticker you can get. You get the t-shirt. You see it on signs. You see it on billboards. This is what our culture does. They give slogans instead of well-reasoned arguments. And so what did I say? Well, I asked her 2 questions in response. Now I just kind of summarized our discussion to fit on the slide here. But I said something like, can I ask you a question? Are you against slavery? And I said, are you against spousal abuse? Of course she said, yeah, obviously, of course I am. What kind of question is that? And then I said, hey, if you don't like slavery, don't own a slave. If you don't like spousal abuse, then don't abuse your spouse. Now, that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? I should point this out, that 200 years ago, this was the argument people used when William Wilberforce said, slavery is wrong. They said, listen, buddy, if you don't like slavery, don't own one. It's the same argument that people are using for abortion now. And so, I said, if you don't like it, don't own one. If you don't like spousal abuse, don't abuse your spouse. She said, but slavery and spousal abuse are really wrong. You see, she thought those were objectively wrong. But when it came to abortion, it was all about likes and dislikes. And so I said, exactly, so is abortion. See, moral claims are objective insulin claims. And our culture has got this completely upside down. So my friend was assuming that morality was like ice cream. That it was just a matter of opinion. You don't like abortion, don't have one. You don't like chocolate, ice cream, get vanilla. You don't like the chicken, get the steak. Those kind of, you don't like the Leafs, watch Ottawa or something. It was just subjective truth claims. Now, she was confusing something. There's a difference between slavery is wrong, which is about the act itself, and I don't like slavery, which is about my personal preference. The same was true with spousal abuse. And see, abortion is the same thing. It's a moral claim. It's either true or it's not. See, I'm not arguing. I do a whole presentation on abortion. And I'm not arguing right now that abortion is wrong. I'm just saying that claim is it is an objective claim. Okay? That could be true or false, but it's an objective claim. So, could you imagine that the courts bring an abusive husband, okay, to the judge, and the judge says, well, I don't beat my wife, but that's just true for me. Some people love their wives, some people beat them. He can do whatever is true for him. Who am I to judge? That sounds ridiculous, because it is. But our culture, that's the mentality. Who am I to judge? Because morality is subjective. Now, my friend assumed that morality was like ice cream, like I said. And this sounds ridiculous when we actually play it out. And so, if I were to say, if there was no objective standard of morality, then actually we can't judge anything as morally wrong. This is really important. If morality is like ice cream, then we have no moral right to judge someone's personal morality than we do to judge their preference of ice cream. Okay? Imagine someone saying, I like butterscotch ripple, and then, I can't believe you like butterscotch ripple. I'm just aghast at that. I'm horrified. No, people don't do that with preference claims. And so, who are we to judge a guy like Paul Bernardo? You know, serial rapist, murderer, if morality is like ice cream? We can't. Okay? He did what was true for him. A guy like Adolf Hitler, mass murdered millions of people. If morality is like ice cream, we can't judge a guy like that. And the truth of the matter is, we did. There was people who were in the Nazis, who were working with the Nazis, and later on, after the war was over, they actually judged those people. Not within their own culture, but we said, what you did was morally wrong. They actually said, there's a law above the law. You see, their own law said they could kill Jews. That was fine in their culture. But it wasn't until, and so how could we try those people? Well, in their culture, that's true for them. But we said, no, there's a law above their law. There's a moral law. And so, and it's a standard that we're all under. So you can think of the moral law like the law of gravity. Okay, I want you to think about this. It doesn't matter where you go in the universe. It doesn't matter if you believe in gravity or not. You can't escape the reality of gravity. So you drop out of a plane, you better have your parachute, right? Here he comes. And what happens if you forget your parachute? Exactly. So, oh, this guy's going to get up. He's fine, by the way. No one was hurt. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, what a mess. So, no stick figures were hurt during the making of this presentation. So, just as there's an objective law of gravity, there's also an objective standard of morality that exists outside of us all, okay? And just like gravity, it's an immaterial thing, okay? And it's outside of any one person, it's outside of any one culture, okay? Because there's lots of cultural relativists out there too, not just personal relativists. So, and the moral law actually stems from God's nature, and it's given through His commands. And that's why we have a duty to follow His moral law. It's because we have an authority, God, who gives these commands. Okay? So that's the moral law. You can think of the moral law as, here's a bowling analogy. And so how do you know a good bowler from a bad bowler? Well, look at the what? The score. Look at the score. So he got 186. Is that good or bad?
Yeah.
So there's some bowlers here. You're a bowler. So 10-pin bowling, well, you need to know the score. I'm not going to tell you the score yet. Some people will try to compare their score with other people's scores. You know, sometimes we'll go downtown to some street evangelism, and we'll ask people if they're a good person. And almost 100% of the time, people will say, yeah, I'm a good person. And then I ask them, well, by what standard are you a good person? What's the first thing they do? They compare themselves to someone else. Yeah, well, I'm better than Osama bin Laden. And you know what? Osama bin Laden could say, well, I'm better than Adolf Hitler. We all compare ourselves to other people. But that actually won't tell you if you're a good bowler or not. Because maybe your friends are really bad bowlers. Okay? So that's not a good way to tell if you're a good bowler. The way you tell if you're a good bowler is you look at the standard. Okay? And in bowling, a perfect game is 300 in 10-pin bowling. Okay? And so you can look at the standard, and we could say, yeah, you're a good bowler based on that standard. And so the moral law is like the standard of bowling. Now, this standard is actually written on our hearts. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Romans 2 says that for when the Gentiles, who do not have the law, they didn't have the moral law, by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. It says they show that the law, the works of the law, is written on their hearts. Because you're made in God's image, everyone, non-Christian and Christian, we all have the moral law written on our hearts. And one way I can prove this is if I want to know if someone truly believes in their hearts that, if I want to know their status of morality, what they think of morality, I can figure that out not by what they say, because lots of people say some really dumb things. And it's not by what they do, but it's by how they want to be treated.
Okay? C.S. Lewis put it this way. If someone says there's no objective moral truth, no objective moral standard, cut in front of them in line. What happens? This person who says there is no moral truth will say, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, get in the back of the line. Because they think there's a moral standard. And it comes out when they react. In fact, there's a quote that says, you know people's beliefs about morality not by their actions, but by their reactions. You know, there's a story about actually that professor Frank Beckwith. He went on this discussion panel, and there was like a radical relativist feminist who was there, and she was going on and on about how there's no moral truth and everything's relative. And so as she's speaking, he picks up her purse, starts going through it. Could you imagine, ladies? And so he's going through her purse and looking for whatever, seeing if he can find something to take. And all of a sudden, in mid-sentence, she stops. What are you doing? Well, I'm just going through your purse. You can't do that. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Those words, so what he said was, hey, you just said there's no moral absolutes. There's no objective moral standard. This is true for me. I go through people's purses. That's what I do. It also reminds me of a debate. I was watching a debate between a theist, a Christian, and an atheist. The atheist got up in his opening speech and he said, he was railing against Christianity. He said that he brought the Crusades. He said, look at all the evil these Christians have done. Look at the Salem witch trials. He said, Christians are responsible for oppressing women. And you're all just a bunch of intolerant, homophobic bigots. And then he went against God. He said, have you read the Old Testament lately? Look at all this injustice and these genocides, whole groups wiped out. Look at all this evil. And then, in his next speech, he went on to say and argue that there is no objective morality, that there's no standard outside of nature, that morals are just a biological adaptation of evolution, and that there is no moral truth. But there's a serious contradiction. You can't say there's no moral objective standard and then rail against a Christian for all the evil done, because you're assuming a moral standard as soon as you start talking about this evil. You see the incredible contradiction. You see, an atheist, their whole worldview is just contradiction after contradiction. And so the greatest argument that has been leveled against Christianity is the problem of evil. But to have a problem of evil, you have to assume a standard of goodness. And to have a standard of goodness, you have to have it grounded somewhere. And the only place you can ground that is in God. And so it turns out, to argue against God, using the problem of evil, you have to assume God as the standard. And so it's just a bunch of contradictions and inconsistencies. So, all that is to say that morality is objective. Okay? It's an insolent claim. Now I'm going to I got a few more slides here, like 5 slides. We're almost done, 31 minutes in. That's pretty good. Pretty good. So, how about this claim? Jesus died on a cross in 33 AD. Now, what do you think? Insolent? It is actually a historical claim. Now, it could be, and some scholars argue over this, it could be 30 AD. Yeah, they're not sure if it's 30 or 33. But, doesn't matter. It's still an insolent claim regardless. How about this one? This is the last one. Jesus was raised from the dead. Now, you say this claim to our culture, and they'll say, well, that's just true for you, but that's not true for me. But what are they missing? We're claiming that this actually happened in history. If you were there 2,000 years ago, you could see Jesus being whipped. Like, you would have got blood on you. You could have touched the cross and got a splinter. Okay? And so, we're saying, no, Jesus actually died on the cross, and then he was buried, and then he was raised. And from the very first, as soon as Jesus was raised, a few years afterwards, that's what the early apostles were proclaiming, that Jesus was raised. So this is actually an objective insolent claim. Now you'll hear our culture say stuff like, well, all religions are basically the same. This is classic in our culture. So what I normally do is say, my first response is, yeah, you're right, they're all basically the same, except when it comes to their description and nature of God, except for when we talk about the nature of ultimate reality, except for the problem and solution for humanity, except for ultimate meaning in life, except for morality, and except for destiny. You're right, they're basically the same except for all that stuff, right? So here's a good illustration you can use with someone. You say, are these two pills basically the same? They look that way, don't they? But when you start to study them, let's flip these ones over. Hey, this one's aspirin and this one's arsenic. Are these basically the same? No. You see, saying all religions are basically the same is equivalent to saying, yeah, aspirin and arsenic are basically the same because they come in tablet form. Okay? See, the differences matter. In fact, if you take one of these for your headache instead of the other, you'll kill yourself. And so there are serious consequences to getting some truth claims wrong. And if you get this particular truth claim wrong, the one that we just looked at, Jesus was raised from the dead, that can have serious consequences. And so let's just look at, we're almost done. Let's just look at this claim. Jesus was raised physically from the dead. Now, let's take the three major religions in the world. We have Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Now, in Islam, the Muslim will say, actually, Jesus didn't raise from the dead. In fact, Jesus wasn't even crucified. Now, almost all historians believe that Jesus was crucified. Okay? Even the most radically skeptic scholars will say he was crucified. But what they say is, no, Jesus was a prophet, and a prophet cannot be crucified. So, in the Quran, it says that Judas, you remember Judas? He was made to look like Jesus, and the Romans actually crucified Judas. Okay? So that's their claim to reality. In Judaism, they say, no, Jesus was a false Messiah, and he did die on a cross, but he stayed dead. Christianity teaches that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was crucified, and that he was buried, and then he was raised from the dead 3 days later. Now, can all these be true at the same time? No. They can't all be true. In fact, they're all contradictory. Okay? And it turns out all religions contradict each other. You know, Hinduism teaches that you can be reincarnated after you die. Christianity teaches you go to heaven or hell. Buddhism teaches that you just cease to exist. Okay? They don't believe in a supernatural God. And so, they all can't be right. When I die, I'm either staying in the ground, I'm either going to heaven, or I'm being reincarnated. I can't do all of them. So all religions cannot be the same. Okay? Because they teach diametrically different things. Okay? And so, here's how we're going to end. I hope you understand now that moral and religious truth is objective truth. That is crucial. In our culture, you're going to run into people who don't believe it is. They're going to think it's like ice cream. And we saw that this moral truth is written on our hearts, and you can actually know it. So why did I give this talk? Well, it's not because I want you to be able to beat up a relativist, when you talk to them. You should speak to them in truth and love. But my main goal was to show you that it's actually the truth that sets people free. Okay, the Bible says that truth sets people free. Our culture has bought lies. And these lies have enslaved them, and it's actually destroying their lives. Okay? I'm reminded of the verse in Judges that says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's just like our culture. They've removed God, and they've said, there's no king, there's no God. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do what's right in my own eyes. Now, Dostoevsky actually penned these words years ago. He said, if God does not exist, then everything is permissible. And that's what we're seeing in our culture. You see the legislation that's coming out, even in the last few weeks, with doctor-assisted suicide now being legal, with the new curriculum in the public schools about transgender, homosexuality, what we're going to be teaching our kids. Just seeing where the culture is going, the decline, and it's not stopping. Okay, we're on a pretty slippery slope. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just going to keep going that way until we get a message like this. It's the truth that actually sets people free. And so in our culture thinks that by eliminating God and truth, that they've freed themselves to decide what's right and wrong. However, by eliminating God, they've actually left this God-sized moral vacuum. Okay? And so we need to be brokenhearted at the damage that these lies are causing for people in our culture. We need to speak up for truth, but you got to know, if you speak up for truth, you're going to be ridiculed and you're going to be persecuted.
Yeah.
You give a message like this in our culture, and you will be ridiculed. Okay? I've been there. And so always remember, though, that suffering is the mark of a disciple. Okay? And that we are actually on the winning side because truth is on our side, as we've seen today. And so this talk shouldn't motivate us to arrogance. It should actually motivate us to compassion. Compassion to those who are suffering because of these lies. And some of these people are suffering without even knowing they're suffering. Okay? And so that's all I got. I'm just going to close in prayer, and then I guess the worship team will come up. Heavenly Father, just again want to thank you for this cool opportunity to come and share some stuff that you put on my heart. And God, I pray that the people here would be open to the truth, and that they would take this truth into the community and into the world, and make a difference for you, and this truth that would actually set people free. And God, I just pray that you would continue to strengthen us, build us up, give us confidence to communicate a message like this, and to do so articulately and attractively to others. And Lord, I just pray all this in your name.